more and more VCs are coming. Taiwan it's interesting because Taiwan is a fairly well capitalized economy. In Taiwan, you do kind of have to sell yourself more and try to convince people more. But in that sense, you could be more unique. And I think so, especially coming from abroad, if you're a global startup founder or someone, because it's not saturated, but there's enough that it's still ongoing. The government's constantly pushing it. There are so many startup events. So there's a lot of this happening.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for jumping on this call with me. I met you during your recent trip to SF when you were connecting with the overseas Taiwanese groups. And it was really cool to hear about all of your different identities, whether it's with the Taiwan's Overseas Talent Office or within the creative community as well, bringing Sundance to Taiwan and also being a musician and DJ yourself. So I wanted to start off with asking a little bit about the work you're doing with Taiwan's Talent Office and how that relates to the Taiwanese startup ecosystem.
So I'm a managing director for the Taiwan Employment Gold Card Office and as well as the International Talent Taiwan Office. Both of these offices have to do with Taiwan's initiatives to recruit more foreign talent to Taiwan. The Gold Card itself is a 3-year resident and work visa for highly qualified professionals. But obviously Taiwan as a whole, we would like more people from overseas students to professionals to entrepreneurs to come join Taiwan. So that's the Talent Taiwan Office side of things.
And can you tell me a little bit about Startup Island Taiwan?
Yes. So as part of the National Development Council, which is the government arm that we are under, currently there's a startup side of things. So the NDC has also put forward the Startup Island Taiwan initiative, which is a nationwide brand to promote startup from Taiwan to global markets, as well as welcoming global startups to Taiwan. So it's kind of a national brand that all of the Taiwan startups in the different programs fly under.
So it seems like there's Startup Taiwan, and then there's also a lot of effort in the Taiwanese government attracting more foreign talent to come to Taiwan for the startup ecosystem. Can you tell me a little bit about why Taiwan is trying to attract foreign talent and what are the advantages for foreigners to come to Taiwan?
I think from quite a while ago now, Taiwan's always wanting to globalize and connect more with international markets. We're very well located in East Asia, but we are a very small island. So we do rely on partners in different markets. So part of a lot of bringing people in, bringing startups in has to do with globalizing Taiwan. Second of all, many Asian countries as well, there is a talent shortage, especially in the tech industries. So connecting with different pools is also quite crucial in order to sustain the Taiwan technological advancements as well as the economy.
In terms of the talent shortage that you're talking about, what kind of talent is Taiwan looking for right now?
Everyone's heard of TSMC, Taiwan's role in semiconductors. TSMC is a giant in itself. They're constantly looking for thousands of engineers, hardware and software engineers, but it's the whole supply chain that's connected to the manufacture of the semiconductor chips. Following on, everyone now knows about NVIDIA, Supermicro, AMD, ASML, all of the different other global players in the supply chain connected to semiconductors. So each of these big companies, they're all with the evolution of AI, each of these companies in the supply chain are all looking for people. Many of them are in Taiwan. They've all set up R&D centers here in factories, and they're constantly looking for more people to come fill those gaps.
Now, this type of work that is being done by TSMC, especially on the hardware side right now, how is that impacting the startup community within Taiwan?
So you start to see, because of such strength and focus, and it's kind of like a magnet, right? So TSMC draws all of these different players into the market ecosystem. And that's where the opportunities start to come up, So as AI becomes more and more common, obviously the startups, people in the different spaces looking to fill the gaps in the production, in the integration, in the applications. So that's where the opportunities come up for startups to do something different, to solve a different problem. And obviously they move a little quicker than these monolith giants like TSMC, which I think, they do rely on a lot of the different innovations that come from startups as well.
What are some of the startups that you've kind of seen emerge within Taiwan? And for foreigners who are interested in the Taiwanese market or working in Taiwan, what are the types of industries in the startups that you've seen become more successful there?
Mhm. Right now, we're talking more mainly about semiconductors, but I think it's really is a broader ecosystem. Taiwan's role in where it is in the manufacturing market, it's still very strong in traditional manufacturing, materials and different areas, but also a lot in cybersecurity and data. There's so many things happening, all the different innovations to make Taiwan a better place. People see those opportunities. So many startups have a BD, a marketing department in the US, but they're coming to Taiwan to look for engineers to help produce, to help manufacture, or to help refine their inventions and innovations. And that's a lot of opportunities coming as Taiwan becomes more connected with the different markets around the world. There's many examples of these. So the founder-based entrepreneurs, they came up with an idea in Europe markets and American markets, and then they come to Taiwan for various reasons to find talent, to set up a base, to connect more closely with the manufacturing arm. So there's many examples of these that people are starting to find that Taiwan fits. Taiwan's a great place to live. So the cost of living's very, very friendly, very reasonable. So it's a nice place to create a base and then kind of branch out from there.
Two questions here. One is, what are the advantages of doing a startup within Taiwan? And actually, I'll let you answer that one first, and I'll go to my second question.
Okay. So what I've seen, I've hinted at this previously, like Taiwan is a great place to live. I think the peace of mind that comes with living in a place like Taiwan, it's very safe, very friendly. Things work. The MRT, public transportation is great. All of that kind of contributes to peace of mind that makes it easier to work. So people are happier. And that kind of really is quite important when you're starting up. So that's one of the main advantages. It's kind of hard to explain, but the people that have come to Taiwan, they visited, they get that because it's small. You also see the impact of what you're doing. You get to meet people, you get to see stuff, you get to do stuff, and that provide value. People that have come here, the startups that have come here, they catch on to that. And then so they're able to bring more and attract more people and build their startups here.
That actually leads me really well to my next question, which is, if I'm a foreign entrepreneur and I don't speak Chinese and I've never been to Taiwan before, how do I get around Taiwan without speaking the language? And are there resources that can help support someone like me to better assimilate into the community?
So Taiwan, official language, Mandarin, it's still predominantly the main language for business and everything. But more and more, there's opportunities for English-speaking people to get around. I think the daily life should be okay, especially in the big cities like Taipei. Most of the staff at a restaurant or convenience stores, you can get by with English. As a startup, there will be some difficulties. Obviously, most of the setting up your company or your payroll, ideally, you should have a local accountant or local legal person to help with that. There are many only English speaking or foreign language speaking founders in Taiwan, but they have counterparts that help them with local process. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I think in many markets, that's not English. That is something you'll come across.
Are there resources that either Startup Island or the Talent Office provides for new entrepreneurs within the country?
So the government actually has an Invest Taiwan office. There's a Startup Taipei office, as well as many of the incubators and accelerators that are sponsored by the government or co-run with the government. Many of these programs are all wanting to provide resources and help and assistance for global startups. So anywhere from a place to work in for a limited amount of time to connecting with the right service providers to register your company or payroll. There's many job fairs, especially in the tech space. So for people looking to find talent, and a lot of community events, so we host a monthly event for tech people. But we're one of many that host similar meetups that it's a good way to connect with everyone in Taiwan.
What's a good way to get connected to these resources for entrepreneurs who aren't as familiar?
We all have websites, but for us, for the gold card stuff in Talent Taiwan, I think LinkedIn is probably the easiest. All the information is on our websites, but if you want to talk to someone, so we have a help desk email. So that's staffed by our team that answers any questions about visas, coming to Taiwan, moving to Taiwan. For startup stuff, it almost depends on at what stage you're coming. Are you already here or do you want to move here? There's different write-ups, reports also about the venture capital market here, but it starts with information. We're happy to provide as much as we can and connect you with the right people if we can't.
That's awesome. And can you expand a little bit on the Gold Card program? For people who are interested in the program, how do they go about applying and what are the requirements in order to receive the Gold Card?
So as mentioned, the Gold Card is a 3-year resident and work visa. It's application based. So you apply for the visa, and if you qualify for it, then you're issued a card that lets you live and work in Taiwan for up to 3 years. It's renewable. But the most important part is during those 3 years, you have an open work permit. So you can work for yourself, you can work remote, you can freelance, or be employed by a Taiwan company. The qualifications for it depends on your background. So you could be in tech, finance, or education, or arts and culture. There's 10 different fields. Each of the fields has a specific criteria for it. You only need to qualify for one. So it could be salary, could be if you have a salary in the past 3 years over about 6,000 US per month, and you would prove that through a tax statement, for example. But you could also qualify if you have a PhD from a top 500 university, or if you have specific skills in e-commerce or data analysis or something, or if you have patents or inventions or specific papers and publications. If you've won awards in films, or if you're a top university athlete, professional athlete, there's different qualifications for all sorts of different people. It's too much to kind of cover. So what we do is our website for the Gold Card is at goldcard.nat.gov.tw. And then we have a help desk team that answers any of those questions. So have a look on the website because there's quite a lot of information. But the entire application takes place online. So that's quite friendly, I think. And once you have all the documents, it usually takes about 1 to 2 months for the application.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put the link within the description of this podcast as well. And I've actually ran through the website myself, and it's very easy to follow and very straightforward. So I think all the users should have a good experience using it. Taking a little bit of a pivot, I know you're also operating a co-working space, Jonathan. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that's kind of how I started. That's why I'm able to answer questions about, startup stuff as well as visas and so forth. So I moved back to Taiwan about 15 years ago now. And one of the businesses I wanted to start was a co-working space. And I guess with my background, having moved back to Taiwan from the US, I also spent time in the UK. That experience allowed me to pay it forward, basically help the next people coming to Taiwan, understanding what it's like, the different challenges with moving to a different country. So through a co-working space, it's a physical space. People meet there. People talk about things, and kind of found that my niche in that area, I guess.
What have been your favorite parts about running the co-working space in Taiwan?
When we started, obviously co-working space, shared office, we have some events and stuff, but you never know what it will lead to because it depends on what people come through, right? So it's not something we can plan for. Every year, different people come, different backgrounds, working on different ideas and so forth. And one of the things that led to my current position was we had built a fairly international startup co-working space, and that got the attention of the government, which they wanted us to build that on a bigger platform in a sense. And this is how I led to my current position on the Gold Card, which during COVID years was essentially the visa program that wasn't very well serviced yet. And they needed someone to help interface with all the incoming foreigners. So it wasn't planned, but it was one of those serendipitous things that happened from working in a co-working space, connecting with a lot of international people. And that experience allowed me to continue to working for Taiwan government on the Gold Card in Taiwan.
And it also seems that the Taiwanese government is very responsive to the different trends that are going on and seeing that your co-working space was doing well and attracting this international circle, they invited you to this job at the talent office. So it's really cool to see kind of the partnerships that the Taiwanese government is having with the people and also the startup ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to explain, but because Taiwan's not a huge place, but we're decent size. There's a lot, 23 million people, but it's small enough that you can see things going on. You can be a part of things. You don't feel like you're just in your own little bubble. It's very much a community, kind of a small town community feel in a sense. People hold each other accountable, right? So the government is also very aware of that, and they want to work on things. So they will try to find the right people doing different things to work on different initiatives and such.
I want to also pivot a little bit to your experiences in the creative space. So it was really cool to hear about your journey bringing Sundance into Taiwan. I'd love to get your perspective on the parallels that you kind of see in the growing creative industries with the startup industry within Taiwan too.
I think along with all the globalization that I've been talking about, Taiwan wants to connect with the different artists and the different markets in that space, be it film or music or their content creation. So the government created TAICA, which is a content creation agency that invests very heavily into production, into bringing more arts to Taiwan, as well as sending Taiwan creators and musicians and so forth, to providing them a channel to go abroad. And that is kind of like, in some ways, it's a soft power play, but it's also just kind of letting everyone know what Taiwan is about, right? That's what culture is, the belief systems, the way of life and everything that is expressed through art, So I think that's really important for any country to establish its identity and who we are. Obviously, China speaks Mandarin, but many people in Malaysia and Southeast Asia also. But each of these are all very different in their culture and beliefs, so that is expressed most clearly, I think, through arts, which is why it's important.
And that desire to connect with the world, like you said, is spread across the different types of industries and sectors, whether it's through music or creatives or through the startup ecosystem too. Like there's a constant desire for the government and the people to connect with the rest of the world as well, which makes it a very welcoming environment for a lot of people.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing. And a couple more questions on Taiwan's startup ecosystem. I wanted to get a better understanding of the unique advantages that Taiwan has that entrepreneurs should take into account of.
So obviously Silicon Valley is, the beacon in some ways, right? But that also does turn into an advantage for startups coming to Taiwan. We still have a lot of government support. Everything's building. There's a curiosity. More and more VCs are coming. Taiwan it's interesting because Taiwan is a fairly well capitalized economy. And so there is money around, but getting it to the right places may be difficult because people aren't really understanding what startups are. So you kind of have to find that niche, that gap in a sense of coming here. But in some ways, once you go to a new market, you have to be a pioneer, right? You have to sell yourself better because VCs here, equity people here may not understand what you're doing as much. So it's interesting in that sense where compared to Silicon Valley, where there's so much money around, everybody in a coffee shop is a VC and an entrepreneur. So in Taiwan, you do kind of have to sell yourself more and try to convince people more. But in that sense, you could be more unique. You could be more special. And I think so, especially coming from abroad, if you're a global startup founder or someone, because it's not saturated, but there's enough that it's still ongoing. The government's constantly pushing it. There are so many startup events. There's a lot of demo days. So there's a lot of this happening. And then so it may be easier for you to stand out. That's maybe an advantage depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah, there's like an opportunity to shape the narrative as well in that sense. Are there other advice that you would give to entrepreneurs who are interested in entering the Taiwanese market?
Taiwan is a place where you can really figure things out very quickly. Any new country can be a little confusing or intimidating, but Taiwan is not. We're a very small, friendly country. It's very easy to get into. And you can figure out whether or not it makes sense for you on just a couple of trips. There's a lot of exhibitions. Computex, Smart City, these are big tech conventions where, because there's a lot of stuff happening, you can get to meet people and see whether or not it fits with your startup ideas and where your plan is. There's many programs like us, Startup Island. We're all happy to help. A lot of my job really is hosting people, so people that come to Taiwan, they're curious. You could be in arts, it could be in startups. Ultimately, we want people to come. We want people to stay, but that starts with visiting and understanding whether or not Taiwan's a match, right? So I think we're very open about that and very welcoming. I'm happy to set up meetings to connect people. And most of the people are happy to follow on with that because we're all part of this same goal of just trying to internationalize Taiwan, get more people here, see what we're about.
So what I'm hearing is if you're a startup and you're interested in Taiwan, you've never been to Taiwan before, take a visit to Taiwan and see if you like it. If you do like it, there are tons of resources out there that will help you in making this move to Taiwan. And the Gold Card is one example, and your office is one example of that as well, Jonathan.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Any last words here, Jonathan?
I wish I had a better tagline for Taiwan. We used to say Taiwan is Asia's best kept secret. And there's a reason for that, right? It's something that not everyone's aware of, but hopefully we can change that narrative. But I do think once people see it or visit it, experience it, they're like, oh, actually, this is really quite nice. And Taiwan has a way of sucking you in. And it's great. So I hope more people get to experience it.
All right. Thank you so much for chatting with us today, Jonathan. This was a lot of really cool insights about Taiwan and also a lot of the potential that entrepreneurs can have within the startup ecosystem in Taiwan. So appreciate this conversation. And for people who are interested, they can go ahead and click on the links down in the description to bring them to the Gold Card page.